Okay, so on the DVM dash, this is Business 436, the DVM dash. Questions with answers is prompts. I talked about the other questions that you can just read my answers. But towards the middle of it, it talks about Paul Leiser has two possible choices for a sales and distribution strategy, going through retailers or going direct. How many units does he need to sell to break even? Remember, break even is just you figure out your variable cost per unit, and then your sales price minus your variable cost per unit gives you your unit contribution, and then you take your fixed period cost and divide that by the unit contribution, and that tells you how many units it takes to break even. Okay, so then it says, so break even selling direct, or how many through retail with or without a distributor. And I say, see my attached sheets, which I sent to you. And then it says there's a lot of significant information about the sales prices, variable costs, and fixed costs. You need to make some assumptions. So I went through and made some assumptions. You're not going to get this thing 100% right just because there's different assumptions that you can make. I mean, there is no 100% right because you got to make some assumptions. But first one we did was direct to consumers. And if you remember the case, what I like to do is I like to go into the four different columns. I put the variable costs, fixed period costs, primary sunk investments, and then all the info that I need about the case, that I have about the case. Okay, so the info that we had was that we know that he was going to sell for $300 per unit. Now, on this one, I put stars by the ones that matter per each one because I put all the info for everything down. So some of this won't matter for going direct to consumers. It'd be for retailers. Like it says, the retailer's gross margin is 35%. So that's gross margin of the sales price. So 300 minus 105, which is 35%, is $195, which is the manufacturer's price. He's the manufacturer, or I call it the wholesale price too. Cost per unit was $100 per unit plus for him, $100 per unit plus $1 for it to get shipped to Paul Leiser. And then here's all the different fees. And since this doesn't concern direct to consumer, we won't go over that right now. We'll go over the other ones. And then another cost is that defect rate of 10%. So if the price is $100 per unit and you figure one in every 10 is going to be bad, that's $10 per unit cost. That's the way I figured it. Okay. So what we'll go through is we'll do the variable costs. So if he was selling direct to consumers, that would be him just distributing it, or he'd be buying it. So $100 per unit plus $1 to ship to him from overseas. They ship it to him. Okay. The defect rate of 10%, so $10 per unit basically, because 1/10 of them are going to be worthless. And then he's going to have a distributor, and distributor, basically, I'll put a star over here too. I forgot to mark that we're going to use the distributor. Because someone's got to distribute and he's got a full-time job, so I'm going to make the assumption that he's going to have someone that's going to distribute it for him, warehouse it and distribute it. That's 10%. So the variable cost per unit is $141. Okay, we know the sales price is $300, variable cost $141. So his contribution margin per unit is $159 per unit, which is really good. Okay, now if you sell it direct to consumer, he was thinking of various options to get it noticed out there in the world. I mean, you can't just have a product and you got to get advertising or PR or whatever. So I took both options. That 5,000. This is a fixed period cost. I used it as 5,000 for a 4-month PR campaign and 6,000 in advertising. So a total of 11,000. The other costs were the primary sunk investment costs. $300. Now remember, they're asking for break even. They're not asking for payback. So break even is fixed period costs divided by the unit contribution margin per unit, right? It tells you the number of units it would take to break even. So $11,000 in fixed period costs divided by the 159 in contribution margin means that he'd only have to sell 70 units to break even. That doesn't pay off its primary sunk investment. That's payback or payout, I think he calls it. I call it payback. Okay, so that's direct to consumers. Okay, the retail one gets a little bit hairier. There's a couple options. One was the retailer where he wouldn't use a sales agent. He would go to a trade show. So again, I put that in a fixed period cost. Yeah. So anyway, so now there's a lot more cost involved with the retailer because you've got the price that you're going to get for it goes down too. It goes to 195. Direct consumers, you're selling for 300. Now you've got a wholesale price because they want a 35%. They have a 35% gross margin. I just figured it 300 times 35%. It could have been figured a different way, but for right now, it's fine. Cost per unit's $100 plus one for shipping. That co-op advertising fee is 9%, so we're going to mark that because these are all applicable, right? I forgot to put stars by yours. Damage allowance is something also that the retailers make you charge you for. 3% of sales. It says of their sales, so that's 3% of 300. You gotta make sure you figure these out right because, for instance, this co-op advertising fee is 9% of manufacturer's cost. That's Lizer selling it to them. The wholesale or the manufacturer's cost. So 9% of the 195 is what I used. Whereas damage allowance is 3% of sales. Well, the sales is $300 per unit. This is the retailer sales. So then I use $9. The trade promotion fee of 10% of manufacturer's price again, so I used 195. And then there was a trade promotion warehousing and shipping 5%. And then in this case, since we're going through the trade show, we're not going to use the commissioned sales agent. And we're not going to use a distributor. We're going to use there's a trade show cost of $8,000. And logistics provider, which kind of to me sounds like a distributor. They charge $10 per pallet per month, which has 200 units. So that's basically 5 cents per unit per month. That's almost negligible, it sounds like. So I kind of included it per unit. I'll show you over here. But it's really supposed to be per month. So that's not exactly right. And then the logistics provider also $2 to pick, which means they go get it off the pallet and pick it and pack it, but they didn't include shipping, so I added another $2 for shipping. That's why pick and shipping is $4 over here. So I took all those expenses, added them up over here, and it came up with a variable cost of $170.85. So you can tell there's a lot of extra costs associated with a retailer. And you've got a lot lower price because you're just going to get a wholesale price. So in this case, the unit contribution was $24.15. Okay, so if you remember, this is where he's using the trade show. He's not using the sales agents. He's using the trade show to try to sell to these people. So then $8,000 for the trade show, which I use as a fixed period cost, divided by the contribution margin per unit, which means he'd have to sell 332 units to break even. Okay. So that's for a retailer and going through the trade show. There's a lot of different options on this thing, so it gets a little convoluted. Now this is the weird one. Okay, this is a retailer with distribution. So now it was all the same charges as before, except I got a distributor instead of that logistics guy that was 5 cents per unit per month plus the $2 picking and packing. The distributor just you give them the stuff, and they charge you 10% to warehouse it and ship it. So that's a 10% fee. Okay, so all these other charges are basically the same, except for now we got the distributor instead of that logistics, and there's no trade show. So this is the weird thing. There's really no fixed period cost when you go to a retailer this way. If you're not doing like the trade show, these are all primary sunk investments. So you have a sales price of $195. If you add up all this stuff, your variable costs add up to $196.05, so you actually lose money per unit with the distributor. So his price is too low. His margins are too low going to that real retailer anyway. With the distributor, it's even worse. So he'd actually have to raise his price to go with the distributor in this case. Whoops, knock the camera out. And so this is without a distributor. So it's the same thing where you're using, I'm sorry, in the last one I forgot to mention, since we weren't doing the trade show, we were doing the commission sales agent, and that was $5,000, 5%. So you added the cost on the last one, the cost of the sales agent. Let me go back there. We lost the $8,000 for the trade show because you didn't need it because now you're using sales agent, but we added the 5% commission sales agents and 10% distributor. Now without a distributor, he's going to have to send the stuff out himself. So he's going to have to figure that out some way. But there's going to be a shipping charge no matter what, even if he just inventories the stuff himself and sends it out. You still got the sales agent. There's no trade show, but you still have the sales agents, okay? And that's 5%. So you save the 10% cost of the distributor. So now here his unit contribution goes up to $16.45. But I just don't, there's no fixed period costs. These are all primary sunk investments. For the faceplate, you invested in that. For the housing, you invested in that. And the tooling. So those are all primary sunk investments. There's really no fixed period cost. So I don't know how you do a break even if you don't have any fixed period costs, unless I'm thinking of this differently. Because the sales agent is on a 5% commission, so that's per unit, right? 5% per unit. It can be 5% of the total, but it's still 5% of the total, 5% of the units, it's the same thing. It's not a fixed period cost. It's not like you're paying them $5,000 a month. That would be a fixed period cost. You're paying them a percentage, which would be a variable cost. You sell more, you pay more, the same percentage, but you pay more. Fixed period costs, if you had a $5,000 salesperson per month, then it's only $5,000 whether you sell more or less, unless they get a commission on top of their salary. With the trade show, it was just $8,000. Okay, so I don't know how you do a break even without a fixed period cost, because when you think about it, there really would be no fixed period cost in this one. Okay, so that's my explanation of those worksheets. So remember, when you're doing these, just kind of always do it this way. Variable costs. And variable costs, remember, will go up and down with the number of units. So if the $100 per unit is the cost, right? That's a variable cost. So that goes, the total of that goes up and down with the number of units. Same with the shipping, same with the defect rate because it's a 10%, right? And these are all percentages, the co-op advertising fee, the damage allowance of 3%, the trade promotion of 10%, trade promotion warehousing and shipping of 5%, commission sales agent, and the shipping per unit. Those are all variable costs. Fixed period costs would be like an office at $2,000 a month, a salesperson of $3,000 a month, administrative staff of $8,000 a month, utilities $300 a month. Those types of things would be fixed period costs. But in this case, they don't really give you fixed period costs. I considered that trade show a fixed period cost in one of the earlier break-even analysis. And so that one had a break-even point. So that's my explanation of these. I don't know if they're 100% right, but you'll talk with your group and see if you can work them out.